The Eight, a ghost story as told by Brenton French. The town of Araby Hollow was once home to blue-blooded aristocracy. Was. Until the day when a mysterious plague claimed the wealthy, one by one, sending them into ornate mausoleums and beneath extravagant tombstones. Few attended the funerals of the many dead rich in Araby Hollow for fear of infections, and those who did regretted it greatly. They said that the bodies of the men, women, and children of Araby Hollow were the most disgusting thing they had ever laid eyes on. The skin of the corpses was as wrinkled and purple as the skin of a spoiled prune, and the mouths and eyes of the dead were ballooned and swollen, seeping with some foul, frothy discharge. The bodies of many were so swollen, in fact, that the funeral home director, Mr. Wilkins, had quite a bit of difficulty in cramming them into their coffins. The very first to die of the plague was Hazel Brimwell, the Golden Lady. Wife of the late Howard Brimwell of Brimwell Cole, Hazel had been the matriarch of Araby Hollow, feared and respected by all who lived in the town. When she had died of the sudden illness, the town rejoiced, for the many friends of the late widow Brimwell suspected they would receive some portion of her worldly treasures. But the greed of the old crone had been so great that every last bit of gold and jewelry she owned would be crammed into her coffin and buried along with her in an obnoxiously oversized tomb that would put the pharaohs to shame. Once the other members of the high society of Araby began to die off and join Hazel Brimwell in the grave, the butlers, cooks, groundskeepers, maids, and other common folk saw no reason to stay in the town and moved on to greener pastures. For the distant living cousins who the estates of Araby Hollow were willed to, there would be no inheritance. None could spend more than a night in the dark and dismal halls of those abandoned homes. Every room of every house was shrouded in thick layers of cobwebs. None could sleep through the night for the sounds of scratching and clawing within the oak-paneled walls of the manor houses of Araby Hollow. And there was something else. The cupboards and cabinets of the homes would crawl when opened with the spindle legs of great black spiders. And so the houses stood empty, and the town of Araby Hollow was rendered a ghost town. Travelers who walked the streets of the abandoned town felt utterly alone as the wind howled over the rooftops of the abandoned mansions, as if to say, "Who's walking? Who's walking in Araby Hollow?" One brisk evening in November, just after the season of Samhain, a lone adventurer walked through the streets of Araby Hollow and towards the gates of St. Ignazio's Cemetery. This adventurer was young Wilbur Fairfield, a member of the world-renowned Walden Treasure Hunter Society. Wilbur had come to Araby Hollow to raid the many tombs and rob the graves and ossuaries of the greedy dead, buried with their pirates' hoard of gold and jewels. Fairfield found the cemetery a cold and silent place. Not even the wind blew here. There were no birds, no crickets. All was dead, and all was silent. The marble headstones and sarcophagi of the robber barons and the old money were wrapped in a fine netting of silky spider web. They stood cold and silent, looking like ghosts. As Wilbur made his way through the many tombs, he came upon a rather large tombstone, defaced by a scrawled message carved hastily into the granite. The words appeared to be a warning written by another treasure hunter who had failed in his mission to claim the riches of the Verity dead. The gold that lies here is cursed. The fortune of Verity Hollow is the inheritance of the Eight. The Eight. Fairfield puzzled over the message for some times, but ultimately found that it had no meaning, and so he continued on to the center of the necropolis. He came at last to the yawning mouth of a great and terrible tomb, the marble sepulchre of Hazel Brimwell. The mausoleum towered over all the surrounding graves of the cemetery, eclipsing the sun. The walls of the tomb were engraved with extravagant bas reliefs of sorrowful angels and weeping saints. The tomb was something straight out of Babylon, with its marble columns and triangular pyramid roof that towered towards the heavens. Wilbur heard his footsteps echo as he made his way into the black cavernous space over the stony floors towards the vault that encased the earthly remains of old Lady Brimwell. Now there it was. With all his strength he pushed away the stone slab, and taking his crowbar in hand, pried the lid of the gold leaf casket open. The air was filled with the foulness of the grave, and there in her coffin lay the golden corpse of old Hazel Brimwell, bejeweled with all her lovely ornaments and worldly treasures. Wilbur laughed, overcome with the discovery of this ill-gotten gain. Prying rings from the dead hands, he placed silver and gold encrusted with emerald, rubies, sapphires, and diamonds on his thieving fingers. His neck was soon burdened with chains of gold and silver, shimmering in the moonlight. He took from the hand of the corpse a silver hand mirror inlaid with emerald and pearl. He admired himself in the extravagance, when suddenly he heard a sound that made his hair stand on end. He looked down at the withered body within the casket and felt a sinking at the realization that the corpse was moving. The head and neck were creaking. The chest of the corpse rose and fell, and the dry throat swelled and undulated. And then, to the utter horror of the young grave robber, the mouth of the dead woman fell open, and emitted a blood-curdling shriek. From out of the mouth of the corpse poured a seemingly endless swarm of hairy, black, red-eyed spiders. They scurried up walls and descended from the ceiling on sticky strings of spider web. Now Fairfield knew the doom that had come to the homes of Verity Hollow. These black spiders had brought the kiss of death that had sent these people to their graves. Fairfield wanted to flee, but the spider swarm engulfed his body, and the curse of Verity Hollow claimed yet another victim. They wrapped his body in sticky web and sank their fangs into every inch of flesh from head to toe as they drew him down into the open casket of Hazel Brimwell. The coffin lid shut on top of Wilbur, the spiders, and the corpse of Hazel Brimwell. The world fell silent again. The fortune of Verity Hollow is the inheritance of the eight-legged